As people around the world celebrate their new year, did you know that January 1st is not the new year? Yes, January 1st is not the beginning of the year. Because you have man-made calendar and then you have God's calendar. Yes, when our Creator created this world, He gave us a calendar. Did you know that the sun and the moon is God's calendar? That's where the word the month came from. That word the month is from the moon, month, like when you say 25th, 26th, 27th. So according to the scriptures, Genesis chapter 1, verse 14 to 16, Genesis 1, 14 to 16, Psalm 104, verse 19. In the Apocrypha, you look at Sirach 43, verse 6 to 8. If you look at these scriptures, you will see that God created a calendar when He created this world. And that was the calendar that He wanted us to use. So the moon is God's calendar. The moon is God's calendar. When God told us to observe the Sabbath, He also gave us the moon to use as our calendar. So when He told us to observe the Sabbath, New Moon Day begins every month. New Moon Day begins every month. And New Moon days are worship days. Supposed to worship on a New Moon Day, according to Ezekiel chapter 46, verse 1 to 3. Ezekiel 46, verse 1 to 3, New Moon Day is a worship day. We worship on a New Moon Day. Then the next day we go to work. We work for 6 days. We rest on the 7th day. On that 7th day, the moon will look 50% full. A half moon, 50% full moon. No matter where you are in the world, the moon will look 50%, half on a Sabbath day. You observe your Sabbath. Then the next day you go to work. You work for 6 days. You rest on the 7th day. On the second Sabbath of the month, the moon will look 100% full. You observe your Sabbath. The next day you go to work. You work for 6 days. You rest on the 7th day. So the moon is God's calendar. And God also told us when to observe the new year in Deuteronomy chapter 16. Deuteronomy chapter 16 from verse 1. God told us exactly when to observe the new year. This is found in Deuteronomy chapter 16 from verse 1 and Exodus chapter 12 from verse 1. Exodus 12 and also Exodus chapter 13. So, New Year is determined naturally. God's New Year is usually around March, usually at the end of March in the man-made calendar, because God's New Year is based on the moon. It's a natural calendar based on agriculture during the spring. When during the barley harvest, when the barley is ready for harvesting, when the barley crop is ready, ripened and ready to be harvested, the new moon that comes after that begins the new year. Once the barley is ready for harvest, just like God told us in Deuteronomy chapter 16 and Exodus chapter 12, once the barley is ready for harvest, the new moon that comes after that, the very first crescent of the moon that comes after that, begins the new year. And this usually happens at the end of March, usually in March or April. That's when it happens, because it's 100% natural. It's natural. It's like a pregnant woman. You don't know when she's going to give birth, because it's all natural. It's like a girl who is a virgin. You don't know when she's going to see her monthly period for the first time, because it's all natural. God's calendar is natural. God's calendar is the moon. So if you're going to observe the new year, you have to use God's calendar. If you're going to keep the Sabbath, you have to use God's calendar. Saturday is not the Sabbath, and Sunday is not the Sabbath. Saturday is not a worship day. Sunday is not a worship day, because you cannot worship God using man-made calendar. If you want to worship God, you have to use God's calendar. Saturday is not a worship day. Sunday is not a worship day. And January 1st is not a new year. January 1st is not a new year. January 1st is a new year in a man-made calendar. And if we love God, if we want to obey God, then we cannot use a man-made calendar. God wants us to stay away from man-made things and stick to the things that He gave us. God gave us a calendar. It is an insult to our God. It's a disobedient to our God for us to abandon His calendar and we're using man-made calendar to worship Him. If you love God, you should not be celebrating New Year in January 1st. If you love God, you should not be going to church on Sunday. If you love God, you should not be going to church on Saturday. If you love God, you have to be using His calendar to observe the Sabbath, to worship. You should also be using His calendar to observe the New Year, which is usually around March or April, based on the moon and agriculture and the barley harvest, as you see in Deuteronomy chapter 16 and Exodus chapter 12. So January 1st is not a new year. It's a satanic new year. January 1st is a satanic new year. It is a man-made new year. You should not be following the world. Anything that the whole world is doing together, that thing is wrong. Anything that you see the whole world that they agree to do together, I guarantee you that thing is most likely against God. When you see the Asians, the Europeans, the Africans, everybody in the world, when you see them unite to accept something, that thing is wrong. Stay away from that thing. January 1st is not a new year. January 1st is a new year in a man-made calendar. We are supposed to use God's calendar, which is the sun and the moon. January 1st is a satanic new year. Stop observing it. Stop observing Christmas. Stop observing Easter. Go back and use God's calendar. And you have to use God's calendar to keep His Sabbath, which is not on Saturday. It's not on Sunday. God's Sabbath is based on the moon. God's calendar is the moon.